So this really says it, what you see and what's going on underneath. And, if there was ever a generation that it was necessary, I think it was probably necessary in every generation, but certainly with the enormous amount of information and everything that's churning in the lives of our children, I think it's so important that we be positioned to guide them at all times with everything that's going on in their lives. And I believe that you can only do this when your child actually confides in you and is comfortable talking to you. Of course, that's much easier said than done, and we're going to go through this. We're going to go through this as we go. Okay. So Ani Bina Li Gevura is a pasuk in Mishlei, and it's a profound pasuk. And what it says is that when you understand things, Ani Bina, Shlomo Melech is speaking metaphorically, that I am Bina, I am wisdom. Li Gevura, I have strength, because with wisdom comes strength. When you understand things, you're much more likely to be able to process. You're able to deal with self-confidence. I always say, if you think of the best teacher that you ever had in school, and I can almost guarantee that one of the attributes that teacher had is that you got a sense of self-control, that the teacher was in charge and nobody's going to rattle him or her. And when we feel in charge, we're much more likely to respond in a way that's helpful. When we feel, overwhelmed, that's when we generally lash out. So this just requires us to really go into it deeply. And I believe that once we have, the Bina gives us the Gevura. So here's we go. If you want to guide your tweens and teens, especially through their most difficult times, perhaps consider setting this as a goal. And I'm going to talk about setting goals in your homes overall, and specifically as it relates to this goal. Our home will be a place where our tweens and teens can talk to us about anything. In a few moments, I'm going to talk about how this goal process works. Look, goals are a personal thing. It's certainly not my place to tell you what your goals in your homes are. I'm just making a suggestion to consider doing this. Those of you who have young children, start now by making that part of the culture of your home, that the children can talk about anything. And even if your children are teenagers, I think it's always possible to get this message across. Our place will be a home where our tweens and teens can talk to us about anything. Rav Shimon Schwab Zatzal says something absolutely fascinating. When I first read it, it really had a profound effect on me. Rav Schwab says that the very first time that you see the word friend in the Torah is by the story of Yehuda v'Tamar. And Rav Schwab Zatzal says that it says there that Yehuda was embarrassed, and he had the items, his stick and his other things, and it says that he put them in the hands of Re'ehu, his friend Ha'adulami. And Rav Schwab says that a friend is someone that you can talk to about uncomfortable things. A friend is someone that you can be honest with. A friend is someone that you can confide in. And I just made it, Rav Schwab did not say this. If you see this little, I'm showing with the cursor, this little star here, it wasn't a family member. Think about that one, right? It wasn't a family member. Maybe it was easier for him to talk to someone outside the family. And one of the things that makes it challenging is that because we're in the family and we're the heads of the family, there are barriers that get in the way. And Sarah's going to talk later about those barriers. What are the barriers to having really effective communication with the children? Why would they not talk to you? And I propose that we remove the barriers. That's what and then that's what happens. We're able to actually have this type of relationship. Stephen Covey wrote the 7 Habits of Effective People, Effective Families. He says, begin with the end in mind. When you start something, think of what the end is going to look like. And I took these 5 situations, these 5 scenarios um, that, I keep hearing, some many years ago, some now, but all of these have come across my phone in the last 2 weeks. Okay? A high school bacher is having a crisis of faith, meaning he's learning and he says, I'm not sure that everything they're teaching me is real. This quote exactly happened actually a very long time ago, where a father called me, um, he sounded on the phone, look, I didn't know, he sounded like a very big Talmud Chacham. And he told me that his 17-year-old son, who's a Mitsuyan, who's like a top learner and a great kid, came home and he says, Ta, I love Yiddishkeit. I'm not going anywhere, but I really don't believe what they're telling us in yeshiva. Lena, later, I'll tell you what Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky Shlita answered to that question. It was really something I had not anticipated, and it was beyond brilliant. A young man or woman who's being groomed or abused, Rahman al-Islam. Being groomed means that being prepared by an abuser or an actual abuse. All but 2 boys, and again, is this something that they're likely or comfortable talking to their parents about if they don't have the information that that's okay? All but 2 boys in my class are vaping. Okay, a high school kid comes home and tells his parents, so he's comfortable saying that everybody else is, but when it comes in his wheelhouse, is that something that's comfortable? This was just an extraordinary situation that I had earlier this week, where someone was talking, and he said these words. I mean, how can I concentrate on what anyone is telling me when I have an 800-pound weight on my back? He told me, he says, Rebbe, that's what I want to talk about. That's what I want to talk about. This boy is in high school, and he's questioning his sexual orientation. He's not sure if he's gay or not. Yes, that happens everywhere, including in our community. And I spoke to his parents, and then the child got on, and this is what he was saying. He said, people come and they talk to me, they see I'm unhappy. He says, this is what I'm thinking about all the time. He says, I have this 800-pound weight on my back, and that's what I want to talk about. And people come and talk to him about his grades and why he's not concentrating and why they see he's upset. This is okay. And I like many parts of Yiddishkeit, but I'm not giving up my phone on Shabbos. Unfortunately, this is certainly more common. And by the way, these are just 5 examples of things that are mildly comfortable to talk with parents, pretty uncomfortable, and some extremely uncomfortable. And this could happen with anything. It doesn't have to be such a big deal. Children could have other things they want to talk about. I don't understand what they're teaching in school. I got into a fight, I'm getting into fights on the bus. It could be as simple as that. I propose to you that the good training happens actually with the smaller things. But these are all things, these are case studies. This is just an example of what goes on in the real world that we need to talk about. And that's why we said at the beginning, this is what you see the 10%. But I'm not saying, chas v'shalom, that 90% of what our children deal with is problems, but 90% of the problems is what you're not likely to see unless we actively talk about it. Again, and this is what I'll talk on. Now, I know this is the reality check. I'm pretty sure, I assume that many of you are thinking, oh, come on, hold it. The parents really, come on, the teens really talk to their parents like that. And then the practical questions. Okay, does that mean that it's okay if my son or daughter can talk to me about anything? Let's say they inform me that they're using their phone on Shabbos. Is that okay? That's it? Are you Rabbi Horowitz? You're just telling me to say, okay, go ahead now. So what happens? Are there no consequences? How about if they tell us something that they should be punished for? What happens? How does that work? And how will they ever learn right from wrong if I become their chavrusa, their study partner, their buddy, their friend? Um, all these are legitimate questions. You have my word. It's in the slide presentation all the way at the end. And that's where Sarah's going to come in. And we'll both talk about this because these questions are all legitimate. And I propose that if you're not addressing these questions, then, you know, we're not really being real about it. Okay. So I encourage you to think about this as a runaway truck ramp. This picture in Colorado, I had pleasure of going there with my wife and children years a few times. And the roads are very steep there. And the trucks rely most on to slow down. Their brakes are not strong enough to stop a train going downhill. That's why you see often, you know, trucks have a lower speed limit, almost always going down the hills. So they created this ramp that they carved out of the mountain that if a truck is going fast, there's no way he'll go down the hill, God forbid, and he or she, and they'll just get killed and kill anybody else in their way. It's called a runaway truck. So they go up that ramp, and the gravity and so many of them have bumps in them, just slows them down until they could do safely. I think that's really what this is, that when children feel a little bit frightened and a little bit out of control, that's what it looks like. And I think what we're also telling, this is something that I wrote, I'm not going to speak about it in detail now, but a few years ago, I wrote in the Times of Israel, and I've been putting it on my social media every year before Purim, that, you know, I've been writing for 20 years that parents shouldn't be giving, you know, parents or adults shouldn't be giving children, you know, lots of alcohol. But I said that my suggestion was, after the children have been told everything and you've told them that, I suggest that you tell them that if they get into trouble, they can call you and you'll give them a pickup without asking any questions. And I won't talk about it for 2 days. We'll talk about it, but not now. Because what happens is the kids get into trouble. Let's say they do get drunk and know their parents are going to be very upset. Now they're sitting there on the lawn of somebody's house where there was a party or there was drinking. They can't go home because they can't face you and they know what that's going to look like. So most of them never stay in a dangerous situation. They either go home with somebody who's drinking, they literally sleep on somebody's lawn, and it's sakonas nefashos for them. So you tell, look, we have rules, but your life matters more than our rules. Just before we start, there's some research. Again, this video will be up on YouTube afterwards. So if anybody wants to look up the research, it's important to see that you know, that studies, professional, you know, peer-reviewed studies, talk about what we're going to be speaking about. These are 5 studies that talk about what makes children more likely to speak to their parents. One is, so here, excuse me, I'm going to read, of course, briefly. They open up when they trust their parents. They open up that they're more safely when families spend time together, and that's part of the overall dynamic. Teens open to their parents more when there's good communication and they feel close. They share more with their parents when their parents are open-minded and flexible. But rather, if they're dogmatic and they're very firm, they're less likely to you know, to confide in their parents. And basically, when they don't freak out, when the parents don't freak out. And here's actually a diagram that shows, you know, these 5 attributes around adolescent disclosure. That the more of these good qualities, open relationships, being flexible, spending time as a family together, trust, and acceptance, and not freaking out when they tell you things, even though, of course, some of the things do frighten us. So again, I really think it's important, you know, to in addition to saying what we think and feel, or what I think and feel, to have actual research on this that does support this. Okay, so main thing we're going to be doing tonight is talking about this goal and how to set goals for your family, what the process is. I'm going to give an example about a goal that your children should hang out at home. And we're going to use that as a sample to layer on top of that this other thing about children being comfortable talking to us. So experts who study change and the like, this is the pattern that they use. Again, I'm using my cursor. Our home will be, that's a goal. Just fill in the blank there, because, list the reason, therefore I will. Okay, so in the person's personal life, you'll say, I will exercise more because it's good for my health. Therefore, I'm going to get up 20 minutes early and I'm going to set a timer. I'm going to join a gym. I'm going to, I'm going to wear one of these wrist Fitbits or something that you can, that measures. So that's a practical thing that you do. Think about what you want, what you're doing. You're supposed to do it in an action form. Why? And therefore I will. Okay, so here's another part of it. Then you say, well, what's it going to cost you to achieve that goal? None of these things none of these things don't require, effort or time or money. So what's that goal going to cost you? This is not something I saw in the research and the folk expert. This is my own thing. I've been thinking about it lately, that that we really need to assign a cost to these goals. Now here's a sample. Okay. Now you should all have Bela, is the chat feature enabled? I think it is. Is it? Bela, you there? She may have muted herself. Okay, I see, I believe that the chat feature is. Okay, so yeah, the chat feature, we used it at the beginning. You should all be able to chat. So what I'd like to, soon, I'll encourage you to participate and come up with your thoughts on this. Okay, so here, our home will be a place, this is a sample. This is not the subject for tonight. Again, this is a sample that we're giving. The subject for tonight is, I want my children to be able to talk to me about anything. But we say here, again, our home will be a place where our teenagers, our tweens will be comfortable hanging out in. Okay, that's a goal that we have, that we want our kids to be comfortable hanging out in the house. Why? Because we'll be able to parent them better. We'll know who their friends are. We'd rather not to have to worry about where they are. If they're home, then we know they're not someplace else, right? And we don't want them getting into trouble. So this is what it would look like if you were sitting together with your spouse, or if you're a single parent, you talk, thinking it over yourself or talking to a mentor, and you say, I'm setting a goal. What are the goals that I really want for our home? So let's say we want to make the children comfortable hanging out. So then these are identify reasons. Of course, the reasons are going to motivate you. The reasons are going to inspire you to keep doing it, even though we'll see in a minute there's a cost. Okay, therefore I will. Now, what are you going to do about it? Right? It's not just enough to say that I want this goal. What are you going to do about it? So again, we're using this as an example. Feel free to chat and add. Here's the question. Having a home where tweens and teens feel comfortable hanging out will cost, I wrote, money, right? It's going to cost you an awful lot of money, because their friends are going to be there. And, when, especially, it's a big deal. You're going to have to keep these kids well fed. It's going to cost you a fortune. What else, folks? A lot of noise. Thank you, Devora. Good. So it's going to cost you your quiet, or it's going to cost you a lot of noise. Good. What else? Tolerance of the noise, rudeness, mess, right? It's going to cost you your cleanliness. Go ahead. What else? Privacy. Very good, right? Your house is going to, if you send them to somebody else, it's private time. Very good. Great. Look at that. Keep going. Keep them coming. Good. Look at it. All of these are costs. And we're going to do it again with this important one. That's when Sarah's going to take over, but that's space, right? Very good. You don't have enough. You have, let's say you don't have a very large house. You have to give up a room, basically. Broken furniture. Thank you. I was a scholar in residence. This is a true story. You reminded me. Who was that? Olga. I'm sorry, IS. I was a scholar in residence in a shul in the metro New York area. And the Rav and the Rebbetzin originally came from Canada. where everybody plays hockey, or not everybody, hockey is like baseball or football is here. So I walked through a room that literally looked like Afghanistan. There were holes all over the sheetrock, literally holes. And the rest of the house was perfectly neat. It was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. The rest of the house was put together and orderly. And um, I went through this room on the way to my quarters, and it was a pretty large room. Anyway, the mother decided, and with the father, they both decided that they want the kids during the winter to get some steam out. So they made a hockey room, and that room they're allowed to destroy. Okay, so this is an extreme example of broken furniture. Okay, unwanted jokes coming in. That's a very important thing, because one of the other things are that if you say we want the children at home, even with your own kids, you say we have a standard in the house. Now, I'm not minimizing it. This is a big deal. We have a certain standard in our house. We don't watch this, or we don't do that. So what do you think the kids are going to tell you? We're going to go to somebody who does. So this is a big deal. You wind up having to think about things in a different way because of this. Okay. Just a moment, please. Second, I'm having trouble with my mouse. Please excuse me. Oh, here we go. Okay. So let's go now. Here we go. So we practiced until now. Let's talk. Okay. If you want to guide your teens and tweens, this is the slide that we had before. If you want to guide your teens and tweens, especially through the most difficult times, perhaps consider setting this as a goal. Our home will be a place where tweens and teens can talk to us about anything. Okay. Now, let's get real about this and okay. So our home will be a place where our teens and tweens can talk to us about anything. Here, the last one, we just wrote the goal, that, that slide that we had before. Now we're layering this learning that we had about, how to get our children to actually make this goal happen. So you have to plug this in. We want it to be a place where they can talk to us. That we did before, because it'll make our relationship closer, more meaningful. It'll help their personal safety. It's the only way we can guide or mentor them through their mistakes. Therefore, I will overcome barriers that make kids reluctant to confide in their parents. Okay. Now, this is important because, initially we looked through some research on this, but essentially what we're really thinking about now is the fact that this is just a lashon b'nei adam. What would we think without the studies? It's logical that those barriers need to be overcome if something is going to happen. If we're going to have our kids talk to us, we're going to have to think about things differently. And I'm asking folks, please feel free to fire away. What are your goals? Sarah, we're good? Okay, so what are the goals? Think about the barriers. Folks, anybody want to say some barriers here? Please feel free to type. Okay, not overreact. Oh, I yell at hi. Acceptance of behaviors we disagree with. Okay, acceptance of behaviors we disagree with. We'll talk about that if that's actually what that means by acceptance. Okay, so not overreact. They're afraid of being punished. Are we going to keep their confidentiality, right? Are we going to keep their confidentiality? If they tell us that, everybody look at the scroll and look at how we're coming up with things that are so important. And again, these barriers, even one of them could make it not really likely that the children are going to confide in us. So keep it private means they're going to keep my confidentiality. If I tell you what's really going on in our class or in our peer group, are you going to tell your friends? And then my friends are going to find out and they're never going to talk to me. Okay. They're afraid of losing their parents' love. They're ashamed. Great. Not be busy, right? That's a cost. You have to put things aside. It'll turn into a lecture. Very good, right? You'll get a whole speech. I don't know the answer to their questions, right? That's a great one. Yocheved, thank you. And a corollary to that is the children might think that we don't know those um, that we don't know those answers. You know that that they think that we don't get it, and if we don't get it, like what's the point in talking to us? What's the upside for them if we don't get it? So look at this. We have about 8 or 10 different reasons, all of them some related to each other, but they're all really powerful reasons why the children would refrain from talking to us. And therefore, we have to really talk about it. What does it look like? You know, that this goal that we set previously, right? This one here that we started with, that will be a place that kids will talk. And then we built on that and we said, well, we want them to talk to us because of these 3 very important reasons, and we're going to overcome these barriers. So what does it look like if you overcome the barriers? Is that what we said earlier? Does that mean you're their friend? Does that mean, you know, what does that do for everything else in our life? What's our role as parents? So that's what we need to do here. And I'm going to talk about that a bit. The big idea in a nutshell is that we tell our children that we're not going to punish them. Just work through the barriers. There's no other way. We're not going to punish them if they come to us. We may have to do things differently if it's dangerous for you, but we'll talk about it. We might be upset, we might be disappointed, but we still want you to talk to us about it. That was something we always told our children. Even if it upsets us, we want to be able to have these discussions with you, and we want you to be able to come because it's a value. You don't need to be ashamed. We know you're ashamed of talking to us, but so that's really what it looks like. And then we get into all those questions. I want to just share a thought from Rav Dessler, Zatzal, who talks about Nekudas HaBechira. And Nekudas HaBechira is the point by which we have where our real choice is. If anybody wants to hear more about this in detail, I'll be glad to take it during question and answer. I want to sort of wrap up this, this component and turn to question and answer because it's so important. But I just want to speak about this briefly. Rav Dessler compares it to a battlefield, life to a battlefield, or we would say today a football field. And the football field is 100 yards, 100 yards long, very wide, but they're only playing really on a few yards. That line of scrimmage moves. And Rav Dessler talks about knowing where your Nekudas HaBechira is. In other words, there are some averos, there are some sins that are way below Nekudas HaBechira. We're not tempted by them. Again, the question comes about if you get schar for that or not. But that's our Nekudas HaBechira. That's below our Nekudas HaBechira. Doing something extraordinary, saying, let's say, I don't want you to talk Lashon Hara for an entire month. Most people would say, I just can't do that. So part of being able to be mechanech and educate your children and teach them right from wrong is knowing where the Nekudas HaBechira is. Again, I'll take more of it during question and answer. And I owe you one answer from Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky that he gave, and now we're going to go. That Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky, Shlita, gave to the father whose kid told him that he doesn't believe what they're telling him in yeshiva. And I found this just extraordinary. I called Rav Shmuel, he's been a posek for 23 years, he's been a posek. And I asked him, what should a father tell a child if the child says that they don't believe what they're telling, what they're learning in yeshiva? And Rosh Yeshiva told me, he said the father should say, the child is 17 years old. He said the father should say, you have 53 years to go. I give you my word, that's exactly what he said. He said, the father should say that David HaMelech says in Tehillim, Yimei Shneseinu Behem Shiv Mishana, we say it Friday night in davening. Yimei Shneseinu Behem Shiv Mishana, our years, we're 70 years in this world. What was that all about? What was the purpose in saying that? And why was that relevant? What's it about? And Rav Shmuel said that the father should say that we have a journey. We can't see Hashem. And we're here to get close to Hashem and to live meaningful spiritual lives with Torah and with Tefillah and being menschlich to each other. So if you don't understand everything, you have the rest of your life, which I thought was a fantastic, incredible response. Instead of saying that you're a negative word for someone who doesn't have faith, you just say it's a journey. So continue your journey. So those were the two things that I wanted to share. And these questions, does it ever happen? Does it mean that it's okay? Are there no consequences? How will they learn right from wrong? That's what we're going to take up during question and answer. What are the practical implications? What does it look like? And how do you come up with a set of house rules and live with it? Our daughter Sarah is our youngest child. And, feel free to ask her or me, again, what it looks like when you have house rules. Were you really able to talk to your parents? How did they respond? Sarah, you want to start off with the Purim story? You didn't make this up in advance.
Sure.
May I, Sarah?
Please, go right ahead.
Go ahead, please, Sarah.
Oh, I thought you were going to tell.
This is a good, no, go for it. Go ahead.
Okay. One year I was at a friend's, a classmate's party. I was invited to a classmate's party. I didn't know what would be going on there. My father, in his brilliance, did know. He did know what would happen there. And he told me before I went, he didn't tell me I shouldn't go. He didn't tell me I'm not allowed to go. I have a firm personality, and had he told me I'm not allowed to go, I wouldn't have gone, but I would have been, I think, very upset. And my father didn't tell me I wasn't allowed to go. He just said, if you need me, just know that you can reach out to me. And he dropped me off, and I didn't know. He stayed, I believe, on the block. Correct me if I'm wrong, Todd, but I believe he stayed on the block. And he was right, of course. It was not the kind of party that I wanted to be at, let's just say that. And I remember being worried that he would be disappointed in me, all the things that we mentioned. And I just heard him saying, if you need me, I'm there. And I felt 100% comfortable. I remember texting him. I still remember it. I had these girls and boys throwing up right next to me. And I just texted my father. He was there within a minute and a half.
Sarah, it was now, NOW in caps with like 20 exclamation points.
I actually don't remember that, but I believe that I did that.
Right, Sarah.
And I just remember feeling so comfortable, which was the theme of my house, which actually, I wanted to mention something, when we talked about barriers before, I wanted to mention that, we talked about the barriers for the kids, but, there are also barriers for parents. And I understand the barriers that we mentioned for the kids about, feeling ashamed and not wanting to disappoint your parents, but also, as an adult now, looking at what you did for me, everyone here should know my father has a very smart saying, and it's clueless parents sleep well, or parents with their heads in the sand sleep well. I think it's
I don't say it in parenting classes.
He always says that it's hard. It's hard knowing what your kids are doing. It makes things a lot more stressful. It makes things a lot more painful. But if you want your kids to be comfortable talking to you, that's one of the barriers that a parent is going to have to face, let alone the children, is that you're going to have sleepless nights. They're going to be nights where you're worried. And this perm story, I think, is a good indication of that. That my father was probably terrified, knowing exactly what would be happening at this party and letting me go anyway. And I mean, props to you, and everything he's said up until this point is true, and I can attest to that because it's how I was brought up.
So thank you very much, Sarah. I want to point out something in a moment about, I'm not even sure Sarah was aware. Sarah is a clinical case manager and a social work student at LRU. She's graduating in a month, and Mirza Hashem, we're very proud of her, and she's a case manager at Amudim. And she has an incredible personality. Her personality and temperament is just so perfect for helping people out. One thing, by the way, parents, before I turn it over, just so for some context about that Purim story, I knew about it because I heard from the kids that it was going to be a wild place. And what happened was I didn't want to go myself because I felt that Sarah would be mortified because I am who I am in the community, and I'm someone who deals with teens at risk. And then I constantly speaking, people lecture, kids shouldn't take, alcohol or cigarettes. So like that would be inviting like the Malach HaMavis to a party, the angel of death, and I thought she would be embarrassed. But one of her friends, the parents of one of her friends, was there the whole time. And I made sure before I said yes.
Oh yeah, Shirley.
I'm sorry?
Shirley was there.
Remember, very good,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I think I told you to make sure that one of the parents, I gave you a list of parents that I would think are tough enough to take care of you and make sure that you're protected while I zip over. In other words, I wouldn't say just go, let them do what they want. It's called scaffolding, where you let children explore a little bit, but you build a little bit of scaffolding around them like they do when they do construction on a building. Bela Barkani has been very kind enough to work in our control room. If anybody has any questions, I wanted this to be specifically interactive. So you can wave your hand, but you're better off, there's a digital hand on your, on your computers. You can click on that. Bela, the digital hand is where I'm working on a different computer. I think it's on that bar.
I think you can find the green hands in the reactions on the bottom of your screen.
And the reactions at the bottom. Got it.
Yeah.
It's a green.
It's like a green, or some people just have a regular white hand that looks like it's waving.
Yes. Okay.
Like this.
Now, I'm just warning everyone, I'm taking off the screen share, so it's gonna be on gallery. If you don't want to be seen, or if you don't want your name there, so you can block your the video. You can click on stop video, and if you click on the name, you can change your name also. So I'm taking it off screen share so we can see each other better. So again, if you don't want it, just please stop your video. Okay, go ahead, please. Anyone have a question, please? I'll give you the option of, putting it on the chat, but I really would like to have honest, straightforward, interactive talking, if that's possible. Go ahead, folks. Anybody? If there are no questions, we'll call it a night. Anybody else, folks? Feel free.
Someone just posted something in the questions.
I see two hands up. Bela, I see two hands up.
They said they can't unmute.
They can't unmute.
Yeah. Somebody wrote, how do you not
unmute
overact?
them? Just a moment, I thought. Bela, are you able to unmute? Naomi, one second. Naomi, can you unmute yourself?
Hello, can you hear us?
Yes, I invited you, Naomi, to unmute yourself. Okay, so it worked. Okay, so everybody else is muted. When I see a hand, you click on the hand and then it'll be a request for you to unmute yourself. Sarah's, address it to myself, to Sarah, preferably to Sarah. Go ahead, please.
First of all, thank you very much for hosting this session and sharing with us. What would you say if you've tried to have your home work in the way that we've discussed here as the goal, but yet the kids react with the same types of comments as we discussed as barriers? Like they say, oh, you still wouldn't understand. I don't want to talk to you about it because you're going to do all those things we said, the punishment, the disapproval, all those things. So when we think we've done the right things, and yet we're getting the sense that the kids aren't seeing it the way we are seeing it, how do we go forward from there?
Maybe, have you had a sit down with them and tell them that you've sat down with them and already discussed this and given them, your assurances? What do they think you're gonna do? They think you're gonna punish them, I mean?
Possibly you won't understand. You're closed-minded. What I'm thinking about is not something that you'd want to understand, or you're old-fashioned.
Okay, so the truth is, there's always a generation barrier, and I think there's a generation barrier every 3 years now because of the way technology changes. Maybe you should ask them to try you out. Tell them that if you tell us something and we're not sure and we won't know how to respond, we'll go to a professional to talk it over with before we respond to you, before we say anything, before we punish you. And all you could do is give them the word. They know what the truth is, that you don't understand is not a small thing. We don't understand. I mean, you can understand somewhat. We don't remember what it was like to be, a teenager in a peer group where one person, if one person says something negative, the whole class, you shame. Remember, thankfully we blocked those painful memories out of our brains. Another thing, Naomi, to consider is, here's another way maybe that can help, understand this from the perspective of children. And that might be an idea. Why don't you ask the kids to tell us what do you think we don't get? Don't tell us what you did. You think we don't understand, vaping and marijuana? You think we don't understand, being out late at night, getting into trouble? Ask them, tell them, what do you think we don't understand? But here's something to think about. When we were kids, if we were embarrassed in front of 5 people or 25 people. It's 10,000 now. Think about that. We didn't live like that. We didn't live under that pressure. So if you say something, for example, you don't keep that confidentiality, and they wind up, getting humiliated, and somebody put something on social media that, Yankee's parents went and told everybody he's a rat, and like, where do you go to hide? I was asked to consult with a number of yeshivos, Nebuch, where the last few were young ladies in high school. Someone said something negative or posted a picture that wasn't whatever, and some of the girls, like, they stay home for months. They don't want to go back. You can imagine. So that's something that we really, it's very possible to tell them. Say, I thought of this. Someone just mentioned this to me about how different things are. Tell me what the things that, I don't know. Sarah, what do you say? Any ideas, Sarah?
My answer to anybody who asks me questions like this and asks me about how it was growing up, is I believe there's no reason not to have open communication, no reason not to have a discussion. And I love what Rebbe Horowitz said about just being honest. Just sit down with them and have I think kids are much smarter than we give them credit for, and sitting down and having conversations saying, tell me, why do you think this? What do you think I won't understand? Let's talk about it. And even if it's difficult the first time and uncomfortable and they don't open up that much, the more that they see that you're willing to have a conversation with them. I know the biggest thing was for me growing up, knowing that I can sit down and talk to my father and my mother about something without being criticized. Now, it doesn't mean that they agreed with me. A lot of times they didn't agree with me, but I knew that I could sit down with them and talk to them, be honest with them, and they didn't criticize me on it after. It didn't come up after. It wasn't something that they mocked me about. It wasn't something that they judged me for. That was huge for me. And just let him tell you what it is, because it may be something that you can understand. It may be something, and be honest. If it's something you can't relate to, say, you're right, I can't relate to this. I think he'll respect that more. And then in the future, when there are things that you can relate to, he'll understand, or I'm assuming it's a he, I don't know, but this child may understand in the future that when you, if you're admitting when you can't understand, you can't relate, then in the future, when you can relate and you try to talk to them about it, they may respect you more and believe you more, if that makes more sense, if that makes any sense.
Yes,
Very
thank
much- Very much, Sarah. Go ahead. Anybody else? Thank you very much, and thanks, Sarah. Go ahead. Anybody
Sorry,
else?
Harwith, there were two more hands raised. Do you take another question or two?
Sure, click on them. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna unmute Toby.
Okay.
Hello, Toby.
Hi, how are you? Thank you. So my question is more, what happens when you've already set a tone that the child feels that they can't open up to you?
Meaning the child, if I'm understanding you correctly, meaning the years that they've been parented until now, we're in a different culture, not what we're discussing, and you want to know if you can turn the page. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, exactly. So maybe you've set a tone and you want to try and open a relationship and sit down and discuss with your child, the past is in the past, and you want to, change the tone in the house because you see that obviously that the previous way of parenting was negatively impacted.
Sorry, you want to take a shot at it?
All I can say is exactly what it's the same advice I gave to Naomi. It's why not be honest? They're not fooled. If it didn't work on them, they know, and they'll be able to tell that you're switching techniques in the middle. So don't try to fool your kid into thinking that, oh, all of a sudden today I woke up, I'm a new changed person. They're going to see through it, and it's going to maybe feel a little not authentic. Maybe it won't feel so authentic. But if you sit down and you say, we've had a hard time communicating. We've had a hard time being open with each other. And I don't know exactly, the scenario. I don't know the details, but be honest and say, we've had a hard time. Maybe let's try a new approach. Maybe and let them start approach it social work style. Let them tell you what it is that they feel has been lacking. My father, in his elementary school, always would go into the classes and let the students tell him, together as a group, they would create the standards for the school, because kids are more likely to keep to the standards of a school and the rules of a school if they had a hand in creating it. So maybe that's an approach you want to take. Tell me, where do you think we've had problems? Let them start to tell you. Then you brainstorm together. That'll also open up a line of communication between the two of you where you can build off in the future, continuing to bridge that gap. And the more you communicate, the easier it is to communicate. That I think would be my biggest piece of advice. And I know I'm repeating myself, but I really do believe that the reason I loved being home every single day and still love going home, I still love going to my parents' house. I'm actually going for 5 days next week, is because
I mean, you didn't say that right, Sarah's
my
son.
son's
coming
going.
home with the parents.
it's because we had such an open line of communication in my home, and I really felt like I could talk to him about anything, and I felt like I can discuss anything. I really felt
So one
validated.
question I have is that I feel like we can talk about things, but there's a tremendous amount of disagreement.
Okay, I'm saying I can't say that my father and I happen to agree on almost all things, but I can tell you right now, and you can ask my father, my mother and I agree on very little, but we're still extremely close because we respected each other's opinions. Now, again, I don't know exactly what you're referring to when you say disagreement. It could be on more substantial, topics.
More political, liberal versus non-liberal, type of things.
Are they more liberal?
You should
Yes,
have
my
seen my
daughter's way
Sabbath.
more liberal than me.
I hope
You
you don't
should
talk.
have
I hope you
seen-
don't talk presidential politics.
No, I
Oh,
told her
my
we
father.
can't talk about that in our house. We're not
Good for
allowed.
you. Good for
That
you.
we didn't, that my father and I don't see eye to eye on. But I will tell you that you should have seen my Shabbos table growing up. I still laugh about it when I think about it. I have visions. Everybody in my family is very opinionated, and we are loud people. And I still can see in my head my two brothers on their feet screaming at each other. My sisters screaming at everybody else to be quiet and calm down. I'm sitting in the corner laughing, but then if I had something to say, obviously I was 15 years younger than everybody at the table, but I would stand up and scream. And it was usually about politics. And that's okay, because 2 minutes later, we set the tone that we would be respectful of each other afterwards, even if we disagreed. 99% of the time we didn't agree, and we'd end up, the end of the argument would be us yelling. But at the end, we either gave each other a hug or just sat down and laughed. We made sure that at the end of our disagreements, we were still family. That was such an important tone that my parents really did an incredible job setting. You don't have to agree with each other. That's fine, as long as you respect each other's disagreements. And
And her two brothers are as close could possibly be, just so you know, even at this age.
they were the two polar opposites at the ends of the spectrum.
For sure. So like, I think Bela, you're my note taker. Are you there,
I'm
Bela?
here. Yes,
Thank you. I don't want to sit and write during the while I'm talking. Natalie, who's the one who's speaking now?
I will say,
Toby, I'm sorry, Toby. I actually made a video. I gave a class on this subject during the summer or the previous summer on, having open excuse me, creating the environment where kids can talk to you. And I made a video talking to your children. I kid you not. It says, listen, if you're listening to this video, it's because your parents want to try a different path. I kid you not.
Okay, that's wonderful.
I actually made the video. So I said that they're really trying. Be patient with them. And they really want to, so I made the video for you guys. So I have your emails. Belina, the thanks to Bela reminding me. I'm going to send it around that you can really be honest with your kids. Sarah's 100% right. You cannot fool a child. You can't fool a kid. Just tell them, look, I'm sorry that it's been this way. You could be honest. You could say, look, my generation was raised trust me, I was a very, very, very restless kid in school, and whatever you want. And none of my Rebbeim did timeouts. I'll tell you that much. None of them said, oh, Yaakov, I see you're a bit restless. Why don't you take a... I'll leave it to your imagination, what happened. So, you say, look, I wasn't raised like this. This is very foreign to me, but I really want to try. Please work with me. And they're not going to test you with something real. I promise you, I could promise you that that first thing that they tell you is not what they really want to talk about. That's not the 800-pound weight. That's just something that they're going to test you, and so be it. One thing, by the way, that with the confidentiality, I just wanted to mention, with my lovely wife Udi's permission, we when our kids were growing up, our natures, my wife and I, and most personality profiles are very different from each other, and I'm not going to go into it. And I give a whole class on that, not for now, but but we wanted the children to know that that if they're comfortable talking to one of us and not the other, that they have permission to do that. And Udi and I never, ever, ever keep secrets from each other, but we really did. And over the years, there was some things the kids were more comfortable talking to Udi about, and there was some things they were talking to me about. And we would give them that. I mean, I encourage you to talk about it yourself, discuss this and see if that's what you want to do. But we actually did this together as a family. And we said, in order to make it easier for the kids to talk to us, they have permission to say, I'm going to tell you, but please don't tell Tati, or please don't tell Mommy. Again, it's up to you to decide if you want to do that. But it was just a barrier that we felt. And we honestly did not break confidentiality with whatever the kids told us. Anybody else?
Mr. Horowitz, if I may interrupt.
Tati.
Sorry, I saw somebody just,
Yes.
saw somebody just raise their hand, but also I did want to point out that people posted some questions in the comments, and I don't know if they're gonna want to ask it out loud, but there are questions. There are some questions in the comments.
Oh, and I didn't see that. I have, oh, 1 second. All right, why don't we take the next one? I'll read them over in the meantime. Can somebody, Bayla, can you?
Nina has her hands raised. Could you-
Hi, Anina. Please. Okay, folks, we'll just take a few more. And
She's muted.
we'll call it a night.
Okay.
Are you on mute? Hi,
Okay.
Anina.
Hi. So I actually have two questions, but I know it's late. So I'll start with one and you let me know if there's time for the second. First of all, thank you so much. I really appreciate just, you guys can, you can listen to a million lectures, but when you see the dynamic between the two of you, it really informs a lot. So Sarah, I'm just curious, like for you growing up, was there ever a time where you felt, and maybe like, I don't think it's relevant necessarily now, but I would think as a younger kid, being Rabbi Horowitz's daughter, that there was sort of some level of, can I, like, is this me? Is this not me? And like, how can I, like be myself when, my father's presenting this public personality of someone that's clearly very, whatever, yeshivish and inspired in his own way, but maybe that's not my way. I'm just curious if you could speak a little bit about that and how you sort of developed to feel comfortable to find your own self within, your home.
Okay,
Yes.
I think we're out of time, folks. Good night, everyone.
That's an excellent question. My father's only joking because he already knows my answer, because we did a similar talk once, and I got asked the exact same question. And the answer is very simple. Not once in my childhood did I feel like I was Rabbi Horowitz's daughter, other than people asking me, but I'd never felt from my family, at least, or from my father, from my mother, that there were standards set for me. Obviously, let me rephrase that. Of course, there were standards set for me. I never felt like my father was pushing me in any one direction. My mother and my father were very, very careful. I mean, if you meet any of my four siblings or I in person, you'll see we are 100% different, each of us, from the next, because my parents were so good about teaching us that we can be our own person, and teaching us that whatever choices we make for our life, if we're happy and we're stable and we're making good, practical life choices, that what I choose for, my Yiddishkeit, my this, that always came secondary. Obviously, every parent has ideas of what they want their family to be, but the first thing was midos, and then was, what our neshama was. My father always looks at a person's neshama. He doesn't care about the other stuff. And that, I don't know how he did it. And I tell him all the time, he can expect phone calls from me daily to teach me how he did it. But he did an amazing job of teaching us that there are no expectations as far as everything else, that you be yourself, you be a good person, you be a good Jew, you respect other people, you respect other people's opinions, you take care of other people, you put other people's, desires in front of your own, you take care of the people around you. So that's what was important. And I knew that without a shadow of a doubt. Actually, I was somewhere a few years ago, and somebody asked me, would your father be? I hope you don't mind that I'm sharing this. She
Go for it,
said,
Sarah. Come on. They say that they want to see a real reaction. Come on, go.
She said, would your father, how would your father feel? How would Rabbi Horowitz feel if he knew you were doing X, Y, and Z? And I'm not going to share what it was because it was actually a ridiculous.
Well, I have the reasons why. We have all those barriers, Sarah.
What I was
Go
doing
ahead, sweetheart.
was a ridiculous thing for her to bring this up about. It wasn't, it was my decision. But regardless, she asked me, how would Rabbi Horowitz feel about this? And I said, my father would care that I'm a respectful, good, like I didn't even hesitate. I laughed to myself because my father made it so clear to me growing up. I just told her, I was like, my father would like the person that I am today. And I remember calling him after, and I went through this moment of like, was that disrespectful of me to say that I assumed I would know what my father would think? And he called me up. I called him up after. I told him what happened. I asked him how he felt about that. And he laughed. He laughed at her question. And he said that 100% that's what I would have said. And he made that so clear to me growing up. There was never that hesitation. It was always just be a good Jew. And I think, now that I'm talking about it out loud, I think the way that I think it wasn't something that he said. I think it was in his actions that he respected people from all walks of life because of who they were, not because of what they did or the way that they dressed or the way that they davened or the amount of time that they davened or the amount of time that they learned, but he respected real people who did real things, who were good Jews and good people, whether they were Jewish or not. He respected people's actions and who they were. And you can't fake that. So that's what I picked up on.
Thank you, Sarah, sweetheart. That was really nice. I just want you to know, folks, that two things. First of all, Yanina, I never let any teachers of theirs say that. If any of the, I told the kids they should tell me if a teacher says that.
I
Because
remember that.
maybe you didn't.
That's beautiful. No. It's you probably did. I'm sure you did. I was very
Probably,
young.
I guess I was so used to it. Sorry, you were a baby. I don't even think you with Yanina, when I first started writing articles in 1996, I wrote one piece about teens at risk and stuff. I sat down with each of the 4 older children who were they're in their 30s now. So they were 10, 12, whatever, especially the older ones. I asked them permission if I could write, because I don't want them to ever hear that they're Rabbi Horowitz's son and they have to behave, or daughter, that they have to behave a certain way. And I said, if anybody tells you that, tell me, and tell them that your father doesn't care and you should. By the way, I just bumped into Rav Wolbe, Shlomo Wolbe's son, who lives in Monsey. And I'm going to have a talk with him. I might even interview him on Zoom, because he told me that his father never. Sorry, you would love to be a fly on the wall. I just spoke to Meyer the night I had Yahrzeit, but he said that his father never. Some people used to come to his father and say, "Hey, why is your son doing this and this and this?" He says, "I don't care. Leave him alone. Doesn't it bother you? Whatever." I had heard it during Rav Wolbe's lifetime, also. Anybody else? Darla, thank you so much. Thank you, Yanina. Anybody else, folks? We'll take
Dora
one
has
more.
the hand raised. Do you have one more question?
Dvora?
Hi, I wanted to know about how do you not overreact?
Oh my goodness. That is not easy. It's sometimes we do, and then I apologize. You have to allow yourself to be human. The Torah wasn't, the Gemara says that the Torah wasn't given to Malachi Hasharis, to angels. In fact, it says, Moshe went up to Shemayim and they said, Ma'ali Elodisha Beinenu, what's a human doing here? And he said, The Torah wasn't talking to you. The Torah said people shouldn't get angry and people shouldn't do this and people should. He didn't say angry, but we shouldn't do things. We shouldn't kill each other. We shouldn't do this. It was talking to people. You don't kill anyone. The Torah was we're human beings, and it's okay if you lose your temper. It's okay. It's okay if you say things that you shouldn't have. You just apologize and like Sarah said, you can't fake a kid. You can fake adults because we have mortgage payments and this and that. Our heads are flying. The kids just look at us and they want to see if we're consistent and honest. There's nothing wrong with being human. And if you overreact, you just say, I'm sorry, I didn't, here's some of the text questions.
Can I add something on that?
Please, Shayla, go.
I think what my father just said was 100% true. And I think a big thing for me growing up was seeing that if it helped me not shut down in the future, if let's say we did, my mother and I are very, very different, very different. And we didn't always see eye to eye, like I mentioned before, and that's okay. My mother's the most important, besides for my father and my husband and my son. She's the most important person in my life. But we didn't always see eye to eye. And, it was so much easier for me to continue having an amazing relationship with her because it was easy for me to apologize to her because she wasn't proud and she would come over to me and apologize. And she would, tell me, depending on what the situation was, she was so good about admitting her flaws and admitting when she did something that, she wasn't proud of, and it made it so much easier for me to feel comfortable talking to her in the future because it wasn't, there was no resentment. I had no resentment. I wasn't angry. I didn't have this teenage, I mentioned before, I'm very contradictory. I
was just going to say it, Sarah. I want to give you a backstory.
My nature is
kids have 50% the parents. So this contrarian streak that I have that hopefully at 61 I use in good ways, like getting up and talking about child sexual abuse. Nobody wants to talk about. That's a contrarian thing to do, folks. You could just imagine being a contrarian in 8th grade and being restless, how that worked out. So Sarah has that piece, that contrarian thing in spades.
I do.
Sarah and I used to joke about it. I actually would tell her I would clean your room. What did I say?
He likes to joke. He thinks it works, but he would tell me, you can't clean your room. You're not allowed to clean your room. You won't do a good job cleaning your room. Okay, you won't do a good job cleaning your room. Sometimes works. I'll give him that one. But I always had to prove people wrong. But I will say, back to what I was saying before, I didn't have this teenage angst that all teenagers have today, and this repressed anger at their parents, because we cleared things up. If something happened and they overreacted, and I overreacted all the time. I overreacted 90% of the time, and I know how to push people's buttons, and I did it well. And but we didn't let it fester. We talked about it. We talked about it right away. I apologized. Whoever was on the other side, whether it was my sister or my brother or my parents, they would apologize if they felt they did something wrong. Now, I'm not saying that as a parent, you should be a parent, and I believe that it's extremely important for a child to see that sometimes a mommy just says no, sometimes a daddy just says no. And I think that's extremely important also. But I also think that it's extremely important to show your kids that you see yourself as human and that you don't see yourself as a dictator. And my father's 100% right. Sometimes parents overreact, and that's just what happens. But take care of it right away. Don't let it sit.
If it's helpful to you, Nina, and all of you, it's something that I always told the kids when they'd be upset about something I did. Okay, I'm sorry. Better now? Thank you. When the kids were upset about something that I did, I would tell them, do you think I did this for my selfish interest, or that I did it for you and I just made a mistake? So I said, anytime you see me putting my needs before yours, feel free to get angry. It's okay. That's something to be upset about. I said, if I made a mistake, take a number. I'm human. Deal with it. If I did it because I thought it was in your best interest. I want to take something. There's a really couple of important ones here, and then we'll call it a night. Next week, by the way, next week, what I plan on doing is building on this week and giving you the reasoning for some of the things that we were talking about. Normally I would do it the other way, do theory and then practice, but since there's a week between it and I just wanted to discuss this, but next week we're going to be doing some theory and some other discussions. As a single mom, is it appropriate to ask a teacher in the yeshiva to talk to my son about sex? My son is 16. So I really would not advise you to do that unless you are really, really sure that this person is going to handle it well. Some folks are able to have these conversations in a way that's healthy, or, and I'm glad that we had a single mom. My mother was a single mom for 2 years, so I certainly have a soft spot for that. So Hashem should bench you. You should have nachas from your children. So I would not bring in another guy to do this. First of all, he probably knows everything already by now. But if he doesn't, or you want him to know certain things, try to find somebody that's closer, maybe a family member, a brother of yours, an uncle of his. I really would hand this one off to a non-family member. And even so, just be careful. I'm not chas v'shalom saying that, Rebbeim are bad people, that you shouldn't have. It's hard to imagine that they're going to have it's going to be comfortable from talking. By the way, parenthetically, when I was a Rebbe, I always taught the Gemara. So if something came up in the Gemara that was sexual related or anything like that, I always taught them. And I told the kids, you're old enough to learn it. I didn't say it in an inappropriate way to 13-year-olds, but I didn't skip it because, first of all, it just makes the kids look, So I just be careful. I'm not sure that I do have a good idea. You might, a single mom, maybe talk to a therapist about it. And if your son has a pediatrician, maybe that he would be a good person to have that conversation during the next checkup. I just thought of that now. That's a better a better way to do this. I have an 18-year-old son. Even if I have respect conversations, he does things that doesn't help. He asked me if I'd rather not share. Oh, that's a good question. So he asked you if he would. Wow, what a respectful kid. He said, again, he's having discussions with you. You're not happy about it and of what he's doing, and he's doing it anyway. And he asks you if you'd rather not share and cause me pain. If you can stomach it, I would say you should say, no, I want to know. That's what we told our kids. If something's going on, even if it's going to upset us, we want to know. But, it's not, what did Sarah say? The people who don't know what's going on sleep better at night. So if you want to, that's why some of the kids, by the way, the things that the kids told me and not my wife were much more that you needed a stomach lining out of steel or, lead. So things that were more dangerous or things like that, they would talk to me about usually. And, relationship matters. And my wife is so wise and she's amazing. That was something they were more comfortable with because of this. So you have to be honest with yourself. If you really don't want to know, then say, I'd rather not know. But, if something is dangerous to your life, I really do want to know. The other stuff, that might be a response. Folks, I really hope you found this helpful. I really enjoyed it. Come with some questions. I'm going to email that to you, Bayla, once Bayla sends me an email. Bayla, you sent it already?
I didn't send it yet. No, I'll send it as soon as we're done.
No, I wasn't checking on you. I know you're very organized. Thank you. And come with some questions next week, and let's road test some of these things that we were discussing. Okay, folks, have a great night. Good Shabbos, everyone, and I hope you found it helpful. Good night.